You're listening to the Well Woman podcast. I'm your host, Gemma Lee, women's menstrual cycle educator, natural fertility coach, and daytime mermaid. This is a place where we discuss all things periods, poo, ovulation, fertility, and sex. Join me weekly as we rediscover our menstrual cycles, unlock its superpowers, and guide you back into your cyclical nature. Leah, welcome to the Well Woman podcast again. I should say definitely again.
Yes, I think this is the third time potentially
Probably.
that I've been on your beautiful podcast.
Probably.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I lose track because you teach in cyclical school. I'm like, I feel like I see you all the time.
Yeah, feels like more than that, but I think the
Yeah.
podcast, this is the third, I'm quite sure. Yeah.
And we are talking all about pregnancy, and we both happen to be pregnant whilst we're recording the episode. So I normally open with like, what day of your cycle are you on? It's also a full moon today.
Gosh, it is a full moon today.
Let's talk about what season in your pregnancy are you feeling you're in right now, and how are you moving through this season?
Yes, so I have been reflecting on the seasons in pregnancy, and it's definitely been the peak of the pregnancy through the second trimester, particularly coming to the end of the second trimester. I've now just moved into the third trimester, and it has been busy. I'm not using the word busy anymore. I'm using the word full. It's been full. That feels nicer. Busy feels a bit chaotic and a bit stressful. Yep. I'm now using the word full. It has been full, particularly being my second pregnancy, and I have a 6-year-old and daily activities and in and out of the house, and it is very different the second time around. But I am starting to slowly wane and come back in, having that foresight of seeing the birth inevitably happening in 7, 8, 9 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, something like that in the future. And I guess I would have given birth by the time this podcast is released. So I feel like I am just in that initiation from mother and going into the Marga Enchantress phase of the pregnancy, just that insight. Kind of feels like you've just ovulated and the hormones are starting to dip and you're just starting that initiation inwards.
Yes, the inner view of yourself.
Yes, I'm starting to feel more dreamy and psychic and more connected to the birth and the baby, and finishing up all the projects and starting to think about preparing.
It's such a
nice space.
Oh, I can't wait to get there.
It's a nice space, yes, but it's still just the initiation. I've still got things. The next couple of weeks are still busy with things to finalize to be able to fully enter that space. But yeah, this pregnancy's gone so quick. I just can't believe it.
It's whizzed by. I feel like I've been admiring your growth of fullness on Instagram, and it's really beautiful to see, but it does really go quite quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, it does. It definitely does. I just popped out quicker this time and then got really busy through the middle of the pregnancy, and looking forward to that really slowing down. And then I'm going to have a new little dependent baby on me, which is very exciting, very dependent.
Yes. Well, we are going to talk all about pregnancy.
Yes.
Let's just let everybody know who you are, though. Like,
yes.
I love and admire you so much, but let's just have you share, what is it that you do outside of motherhood? Who are you outside of motherhood, and how, because you are a great service giver to the female feminine collective. So what is it that you provide? What is it that you share and educate on? And then let's delve into pregnancy topics.
Yes. Well, definitely my number one label and role in this lifetime is being a mother. And that's definitely going to be amplified, being a mother of 2. And I have always danced with these roles of trying to balance motherhood and being in service. I am so lit up by trying my best to be a beautiful mother and give my daughter the best life I can. But then it also really lights me up being in service to women and doing womb work and helping women come back into themselves and realize that they have this innate healing ability inside them, and they have all the wisdom of their ancestors inside them. And it feels really important for me, through the remembrance that I've had, to share that. We've gone so many generations of handing our power over to the patriarchy and the masculine and the systems, and that definitely very much comes into birth, pregnancy and birth, and the menstrual cycle, as we know. But I share through Ayurveda, through the lens of Ayurveda, which is Indian medicine, and shamanic midwifery, and I don't know, lots of different labels, but I guess it's just, yeah, it's innate feminine wisdom that I feel every woman already has inside of them, but it's just a process of supporting them to remember that.
And this is
Mm.
why I am so honored to talk to you about this around pregnancy whilst we're both pregnant.
Yes.
When I was like, you know what, I'm going to do a pregnancy episode whilst I'm pregnant, I was like, fuck, I need to ask Kalia before she has the baby really pronto. Let's get her to record soon. So I'm so
I'm
thrilled
so
because
glad you did. Because
I
I
was like,
actually I wanted to have a pregnancy series in my own podcast, but it just hasn't happened.
the fullness, right? You're feeling your
So
full.
full.
Yeah. And I really envisage discussing with you the things you do that have been supportive and honoring of yourself based on all of your own womb wisdom. Like you mentioned, shamanic midwifery. We've both done the same course there. We both love Ayurveda, have deep passion for that. And so, like, I also want to know what you're doing. Like, teach me, sister. But there's going to be so many women out there who are really interested in these, what the world would commonly call an alternate way to care for pregnancy. But ultimately, this is the way. So,
Yes.
what do you do? Let's talk about that.
Oh gosh. How do we where do we start here?
You want to talk about the, like, I know you're only like in the beginning phases of your third trimester. So do you want to
Yes.
talk about it in terms of trimesters? Like in your first
Yeah,
trimester,
yeah,
like
let's
how
and
did you support yourself?
preconception.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
great. Let's
preconception
go
as
there.
well. I feel like my first pregnancy with my daughter, which was, yeah, would have been 6 years ago now, 7 years ago, she's six. There was I was very masculine in my approach in a way. It was very Ayurvedic based. It was very structured. We detoxed for 6 months. We nourished for 6 months. We had to conceive on this date under this moon at this time. Like it was, whew, it was quite Virgo controlling. And everything was beautiful. There was definitely lessons of losing that control and completely surrendering. And I feel like I got to that process to have the birth that I had, the beautiful birth that I had with my daughter. I got to a place of deep surrender. I feel like if I kept being so controlling, then potentially my lesson would have been to end up in hospital and really be forced to lose that control. But luckily, I feel like I actually dropped all that the night before I went into labor. And then this pregnancy, I feel just this really deep trust. My life isn't as clean, clear, and simple in a way. It's a lot busier and fuller. There we go, fuller, not busier. But there is just this deep sense of trust of knowing who I am. Obviously, I'm older. I'm 6 years older, and been doing the work, and the initiation from maiden to mother has already happened. And so I was preparing my body for pregnancy. I knew it was coming. My partner and I had actually separated for 2 years, and we got back together and it happened straight away, but I knew it was happening. So I was preparing my body, and it happened. And I had it was just less fears, just this deep knowing. I feel I can connect with my baby. I can feel my body. I know what I need. I have not outsourced any of my power to anyone this pregnancy at all. They call it a wild pregnancy or a sovereign pregnancy, if you want to give it a label. But it's not that I'm condoning those labels either. If I have a fear come up about something, of course I'm going to go get a scan. Of course I'm going to go to a doctor and get my bloods done. But I just have not had anything come up at all. Where with my first pregnancy with my daughter, there was quite a few things that came up. I feel like for me, my messages come through if I hear things a few times in a row, then, or from a few people, that is a sign for me to investigate that. And one example for my daughter was I kept hearing of women that had given birth and the babies had this specific heart defect that's super rare, but I heard it 3 times. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go get a scan and get checked for this. And then obviously everything was fine. But yeah, I just haven't had any of that this pregnancy. It's just, yeah, I feel really solid in myself and just this deep sense of trust and this deep connection to this baby and this soul. But it is so different to my first time. It's yeah, it's just so different. And I'm sure every woman says that every pregnancy, every birth, and every child is so different. I've had a deep connection with this soul for a long time as well. I've had, yeah, connection with this spirit baby for probably 5, 6, maybe even before my daughter, to be honest. And yeah, I knew it was coming. I didn't know how or when, but then when I knew it, it happened really quickly. And yeah, I don't know what else to share. Then I guess
So
going
that's
into
preconception. That's like the
yes,
leading into the conception time, which is
yes,
so
and
beautiful.
then also through the whole pregnancy as well. But first trimester, I mentioned to Gemma earlier that I have been incorporating first trimester preparation in my conscious conception programs that I do with clients. I do support couples to detox and then to nourish and to really call the soul in pre-conception. I usually work with them for like 5, 6 months, which is such an honor. And yeah, part of that now is preparing for the first trimester because you change as soon as that egg and sperm meet and implantation happens. You start that initiation into mother or the initiation into mother of multiples, and you change. Your hormones are changing, your body is changing, your taste for food, your love, things that you love doing, your energy levels, like so much changes. And I feel like we need to have more practices and support for women in their first trimester, but it's a tricky thing because most people don't tell most people that they're pregnant in that time, because there is a chance of pregnancy loss or it is a really inward time. But there's so many postnatal doulas. I'd love to see some first trimester doulas, women coming over, massaging the woman that's in her first trimester and cooking for her. So yeah, I don't have really extreme first trimesters, but it's still different. There's still aversions to food. Still don't like my own cooking. Really, I was really exhausted actually this first trimester. I had afternoon naps pretty much most days, which was beautiful. I love sleeping in the day and I love giving myself permission to rest amongst the fullness. But yeah, just that's, I guess, a little message for women out there that haven't experienced pregnancy yet, but first trimester, prepare to be able to rest, to give yourself permission to rest. And the more you resist that, the worse the symptoms become, really. That the exhaustion creates the sickness, and the sickness is the queasies are from not nourishing yourself and eating regularly enough. So have that support ready for the first trimester.
Amen. It's also, I've found the first trimester, now that I'm in my second trimester, has been a lot about you just have to surrender. And I've
Yes.
found like saying to be my partner that, like, babe, how do people do this with toddlers and working full time? Like the
Yes,
fatigue
it's
is
huge.
just next level fatigue. And I feel that, only now in the last few weeks have I really started to get a better grasp on, like, all right, I need to have snacks in my basket when I leave the house. I need to make sure I'm getting nice, good food in the morning as soon as I start the day. I've
Yes.
practiced yoga like 4 or 5 times in the last 4 months as opposed to practicing
Yes.
5, 6 times a week, which is huge for me. Like I've
Yes.
practiced like that for 12 years and it's
Mhm.
such like that's the surrender, what you mentioned about like
Yeah.
letting things go, and it really is a total honoring. Are there any little tips or things that you found super helpful for you during your first trimester?
Rest, sleep. Rest, sleep. Ginger tea, yeah, eating regularly. Um, yeah, the first trimester, it's just it's an initiation process. And then
Mm.
once I started, you get to 13, 14 weeks is usually when you start to get a taste of feeling normal again. But then at that point, I had this really overwhelming realization and feeling like, wow, this soul's dropping in soon. So I wanted to mention my philosophy, and the yogic
Please.
philosophy is that there's at conception, it's not that soul, there's can be conception contracts where that soul at conception is the one that's already been predestined, but another philosophy is there's actually a few souls lingering around, and they don't actually come in until it's 120 days after conception. So that ends up being around 17,
4 or 5
18,
months.
yeah, something like that, 17, 18 weeks, maybe 19 weeks. um and so obviously that can be a
From
bit difficult.
conception, people,
From
not from
conception,
your last
yes.
period.
Yes, we did discuss that without the system's way of determining due dates. Let's go down that later. But I definitely felt that there was definitely this soul that had the contract at conception, but there was another one that was a potential of coming in. And that 13, 14 weeks, I felt that, oh wow, now that I'm out of the first trimester, I've dealt with the physical changes that have happened in that period. I need to really do the work. I need to be meditating, doing yoga, breathing, journaling, connecting with this soul. I felt this really overwhelming, I need to get my shit together because this soul's coming in. And raising my frequency, my vibration, being as clean as possible, cleaning my thoughts, cleaning my actions. And so, yeah, which was, yeah, kind of like this kick up the bum. All right, it's action time now. So, yeah, I was really back to being dedicated to my spiritual practices again, getting up before sunrise, doing my fire ceremonies, all the beautiful things that nourish me and help me be clear and connected. And then, yeah, and I definitely felt the soul come in. It's quite interesting. That 19-week period is when women really pop out. They start to feel pregnant all of a sudden. That's when you can go get a scan and find out if you're having a boy or a girl. Get a scan and see how things are going. It's just like this. Then that 19-ish week period is this anchoring of like, okay, I'm really pregnant now. And that's the philosophy is that's when the actual soul comes in and that initiates that real feeling. You can start to feel more movements. So yeah, I definitely felt that period, this pregnancy and my first as well. And then from that, once the souls come in, my belief is every thought, action, experience that the mother's going through pregnancy, the baby's going through, and that is ultimately what is creating our child, its level of consciousness, its emotional reactions and behaviors. Um, yeah, and there's research coming out about that now. There's a documentary coming out. I'll have to find, I can't remember the name of it now. I'll find it and send it to you, Jem, so you can maybe put in the show notes.
Cool.
But yeah, there's a documentary just about to be released that's touring around Europe around that, the research of how when a woman is pregnant, that is creating the child. They've gone in and researched, obviously, like mental disorders, bipolar and all that, and seen, yeah, how trauma is formed in the womb. But obviously we get all our strengths and power. I guess we kind of focus on the trauma a bit too much in this this realm, but yeah, that's where our strengths and our power come from. And when a woman is pregnant, so when I was pregnant with my daughter, I think it's around the 4-month period. If it's a girl, they have all their eggs. So our grandmothers, great grandmothers, when they were pregnant with our mother, our
Had
egg
us.
was inside.
Yeah.
So you see how strengths and powers, and also the trauma gets passed down, particularly the maternal line, from woman to woman, from mother to daughter. And then again, it's amplified because we're in our mother's wombs for 9 months. So, whatever experience they go through, that is conditioning us. And that's a huge thing to become aware of when you are doing the shadow work and wanting to heal ourselves, is to, yeah, assess what our grandparents were going through at the time that they were pregnant with our mother, and then what our mother was going through. I know for my grandmother, she had another daughter that had a potentially terminal cancer diagnosis as a 2-year-old while she was pregnant with my mother. So my mother had this deep fear of losing children. Um, yes. And then
Wow.
I kind of rebelled against that, but I've been able to step into my trust. Of course, it's there; it's innate in us. Um, but yeah, just a good thing to assess.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know. I guess I've spoken to a lot of women about this philosophy as well, and a lot of women do, I guess, um, not rebel, but don't like this philosophy or feeling the responsibility of
Like reject
determining that, yeah, rejecting
avoid.
that philosophy of that. But for me, it feels like, wow, like I have this responsibility. It feels like the greatest responsibility of this lifetime, or any lifetime, that while we're pregnant, we're determining the, yeah, the consciousness and the state of our child. That is what a greater honor that than, and of course we're not perfect, but that soul has chosen us for a reason. But it also then gives us more determination and reasons to meditate and to do yoga and journal and do all the beautiful things that light us up. And I've had the honor of being in some beautiful ceremonies and circles and kirtans, and just those moments of magic, having those moments of magic through my pregnancy, through the fullness. And those moments of stillness, I feel like I can really drop in and get still really quick amongst the chaos. So again, it's just so different to my first.
What a magical explanation. And
Yeah.
it makes me think of a bit of a funny story, but in a moment of weakness in my first trimester, Brenton was my partner, was trying to acknowledge how it feels to be pregnant. And in that moment of weakness, I said, it's like a leech is inside me and it's sucking everything I have. And he's like, you think our child is a leech? I was like, no, I don't think. So there's it's a running joke now. And
Yeah.
and
Baby's nickname, Leechy.
Leechy, oh my God. But it's very similar to that in the sponge likeness of our
Yes.
thoughts and our
Yes.
intentions. And I've said to him so many times, I'm like, how I feel after you talk to me is also how my baby or our baby is going to
Yes.
feel that you talk to it
Exactly.
too. And I said,
Yes.
this is huge. This isn't, and this might be a bit too much for people, but if you're listening to this series, you're here to hear this shit.
That's right. Trust.
But it really is more dimensional than what we've been led to believe over the
Yes.
last 100 years, of the changing birthing world. And I think something that I know you could have some great insight on around like womb healing and the wisdom of the womb is, how does one prepare the womb to become the creatrix and the house for a baby that's going to be birthed through the magical portal of the cervix and through the vaginal canal? And how does one really work to prepare the womb? I know there's ways I've worked at doing it, but what are your insights on this, and have you done this, and what would you recommend to clients for your working with?
Such a great question. And that's it. That comes into preparing the grounds before the seed is sowed. And it isn't just physical, it
Before the
is.
football happens, the match happens on the field.
That's it. It is energetic, and it comes into what we mentioned about the maternal line and that connection to our grandmother ancestors and what they experienced, because there is a connection from grandmother's womb to the mother's womb to our womb. So energetic clearing, obviously looking after your womb physically, yoni steaming, castor oil packs, just really nourishing your womb space physically is important. Yoni steaming I really love as a practice because of course it's affecting the yoni, the womb, physically, and putting all that warm, beautiful steam up there and the beautiful healing qualities of the herbs, but it's also an energetic clearing as well. It's a ceremony that you can do for yourself. And the more integrity and intention that you have during that ceremony energetically is obviously you're going to get that back. So it is helping to support to clear out past partners, any stale, stagnant energy, and really imagining that falling away as you're doing the yoni steam is such a beautiful thing that you can do at home. I do recommend women to do it at least once a month or twice a month if they can. The week after their bleed helps to clear out any stagnation or anything that's left over from the bleed. And the week before the bleed, that is helping to soften and release before the release happens of the blood. And yeah, for menstrual conditions, it's an amazing practice. I just love that as probably the number one. You can find a womb healer to work with, which can support you energetically to do some clearing. And shamanic drum journey. I've got some meditations on my website. Actually, I've got a shamanic drum journey into your yoni, which helps energetically. You're going into that space and helping to clear that out. And if there is really deep mother wounds, you can actually do that drum journey and journey into energetically into your own mother's yoni, which sounds really funny. But obviously, if there's mother wounds there and you've got that resistance to going into that place, which is that is the place that your creation started and your conditioning started as well. So that's like the source of healing, really. So yeah, that's a big one that I've worked with clients with. Yeah, it's super powerful. If you've got resistance to that, I would be questioning it.
Really cool. Like, really
Yes.
cool that you can do that. All right, we just stopped the recording because of the deep energetic field that was occurring with Aaliyah's microphone while she's talking about the deep womb work you can do. So we just paused really quickly. But going back to that, like, so fascinating. I've done many journeys like that, and I find them so profound. And once you've done that work with clearing and cleansing your womb in preparation, you can also do that journey to welcome your womb into the birth altar.
Yes.
And guide your baby into what it is to journey through the birth altar and the space to be welcomed into the world. And so drum journeys, if you've never done one, like, it might seem a little bit woohoo, but also, as Jane would say, well, maybe it doesn't feel woohoo and you feel really drawn to that for some bizarre reason. You got no idea why. Like, that is the remembering.
Yes, yes, that's how our ancestors were in ceremony and how they journeyed. So when you're listening to the drum beat at a specific beat, it helps us to access different states of consciousness. And it's amazing the information that you can gain from that. You can meet your future baby, like you said, and that's where I've met this soul before initially, many, many years ago. And that's, yeah, those meditations initially when I started on this journey, it was quite hard for me to get to that state. And the drum was my way of accessing that state of consciousness where, yeah, we're so multidimensional. The information that's available to us in those astral realms is phenomenal. So yeah, drum journey into your womb. That's a great way to start, or yeah, continue your womb healing. And physically, one big thing is, yeah, just having that physical connection with our womb space. It's just modern women, we're just so disconnected. We're so up here, all the energies in the higher chakras, in the head. It's yeah, this busy, chaotic energy, and most menstrual conditions are just this complete disconnect from our womb space. A lack of physical circulation, a lack of energetic connection, and that could just because of an avoidance of our feminine energy, avoidance from our power center, our womb space, or it could be from trauma as well, just disassociated. So we've just got to start that gentle connection, reconnecting with our womb space, nourishing ourselves, mothering ourselves. That's a big
Mm,
thing, bringing in that mother energy, starting to mother yourself even before you're a mother, because you mothering yourself is energetically showing the universe that you can mother another, creating that time and space to actually do the self-care practices. And again, that's even amplified more once you do become a mother, because if you don't mother yourself in some way when you become a mother and you become a martyr that's just self-sacrificing, you burn yourself out. It's not sustainable and the resentment rises.
totally.
So simple practices like yoni steaming, continuing to yoni steam postpartum, and then when your cycle returns, just having that ceremony for yourself, nourishing yourself, massaging yourself, spending time meditating, doing whatever you can do to light yourself up and connect with yourself. It is amplified when you become a mother. It's harder to find the space and the time, but you have to, because it's
Do.
that cup that you need to fill your own cup up so you can unconditionally love and give. Because if your cup's not full and you're not unconditionally giving, then resentment builds up, and you'll be shown that the week before your bleed comes, when we have a deep connection before our bleed comes, that crazy PMS week, like we're always speaking about this week of a cycle. That's when the resentment shows up. That'll show you if you're not looking after yourself and mothering yourself.
The death
That's
and the decay definitely arises
it does.
in the pre-winter phase. Um, just speaking about all of this, I'm just like, I have the most beautiful yoni stool, and I have so much FOMO that I don't get to use it.
I know. I'm
And
missing it.
I really miss bleeding. Like,
Yes. Yes. That's the
I
other thing I'd
really
like to
miss
touch on,
bleeding.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding the cycle, even though we're not having a cycle, because, yeah, when we're pregnant or breastfeeding, it's kind of like the hormones are just, we're used to this beautiful ebb and flow of releasing with our blood and then
Feel like a
peaking and
man.
ovulating. Yeah. It's I
Like a
guess how men
man.
feel. Just plateauing all month long. But if we can connect with the moon cycles,
Yeah.
we can feel that ebb and flow again. And that's been really important for me this pregnancy. And I realized that probably halfway through my first, when I was like, what's wrong with me? I feel so stagnant and bleh. And I realized it was because I wasn't menstruating and having that ebb and flow. I didn't feel as feminine as I was, this beautiful fullness of pregnancy. I just didn't feel feminine because there wasn't that flow of hormones. So with the new moon, the dark moon, it's a really inward time, great time to be releasing and reflecting and resting as much as possible. And the full moon, which it is now, there's more of this full energy, creative energy, expressive energy, and it's a time to give thanks, and connect with others. It's generally we don't sleep as well during the full moon, but we have more creative energy. So it's perfect to be on this call today with you to record this
You don't
podcast
sleep
because
well when you're pregnant anyway, let alone when there's a
I
full
know,
moon and you got to piss like
how
6
is
times in
that?
the evening.
How is that? What is that? Yeah, I actually had through my first trimester, there was 2 weeks where I just had really bad insomnia. And then when I did go to sleep, I was having horrible dreams and I had anxiety through the day. It was hectic.
I
I
hear
was like,
you.
what is
I
this?
hear you. I was like, am I a fucking witch at night? Is my mind turning into the goblin? My bestie actually said to me this morning, she's got an 17-month-old, and she's like, that all sleep, like all that sleep deprivation in pregnancy is preparing you for the real
It is.
deprivation of a newborn
It
and then
is.
having a baby. And I was like, I hear that too, but it's not really what I want to hear.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real thing. And we've got
Yep.
Dr. Leah Saunders coming on the show to talk about sleep throughout these phases and how we can
Awesome.
actually support ourselves, because I think there's so many little pockets of pregnancy that aren't really that well expressed and discussed,
Yes.
and that's definitely
Yes.
one of them. So thanks for
Prepared
speaking to
for.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember having a moment through those couple of weeks just thinking, "Oh shit, is this it? Like, am I not going to sleep again for the next 4 years?" But it was only a phase and it's come in little pockets. And I feel like I'm kind of back to obviously, there's the uncomfortability in having to switch sides all through the night. So there's definitely a lack of depth with the sleep, but it's still not so bad. My sleep hasn't
Yeah.
been too bad. And yeah, when you once you have the baby and you're breastfeeding, you just have the hormones to deal with it, really. But yeah, still preconception, that's another thing. Give great thanks for the deep sleeps of uninterrupted sleep and waking up in the morning, and then say goodbye to that.
I'm just like, can't we just sit in women's circle all pregnancy long so we can just ride the
Yes.
oxytocin high until our body can produce
Yes.
its own oxytocin through
Mm,
breastfeeding? That would just, yeah, I've definitely noticed that sitting in some circles that I've been in through pregnancy. I'm like,
mm.
God, why do I feel like I'm like this sexy, sassy person today? And I've just got all this extra, juiciness that I
Yeah.
haven't tapped into for months. And I'm like, oh, that's not me. That's the vibration of the group.
Yes.
I'm just going to
Bring in more of
sponge
that.
that with my leech to take home for a little bit. I'll bottle that up.
Little leechy there.
But let's
More of
let's
that.
yeah, more of
More
that,
women's
definitely.
circles, more women's circles. That's the magic of this pregnancy and the moments that I've felt
Mm.
just, yeah, the oxytocin and the connection to this baby has been in circle on retreat or in circle. So I've got more of that coming this weekend. I've got my mother blessing this weekend, actually. So yeah, I'm very excited. That's where the
Oh,
juiciness is. I
we could
wish
do
for
a
every
whole
woman to experience that.
we could do the whole episode of Mother Blessing. I've got a
Yeah.
vision. I told many of the sisters I sat in circle with Jane and the shamanic midwifery course.
Mm,
There was like what 52 of
amazing.
us, like a lot of us, and I told a
Oh,
number of them, well, they saw that I was pregnant. I announced that when I was
mm.
with the moon in my cycle check-in in the
Oh,
circle of like 70 people.
beautiful.
And I was like, I had this vision of us doing a camp out and us just
Yes.
reliving a camp out experience over like 2 or 3 days and just having a whole day of mother blessing and
Mm.
different rituals, and it not always 100% being focused on me,
Mhm.
but also just the
Mhm.
caring of the sisterhood, which then
Mm.
does care for the mother to be.
Yes,
And
exactly.
anyway, so who knows whether that could happen in the far out world that we live in, but
Yeah,
vision I've had.
I've got the similar vision. Next year, I'm so keen to run retreats for mother and baby and just have that beautiful, nourishing time and be in circle.
Maybe I'll
Yes.
come because I'll have a baby.
No, I was just going to say there's Big Mamas Camp out, which is really awesome, but you'll
Yep.
probably be out for this one this year. But yeah, it's beautiful to be around other mothers that are breastfeeding and having these similar conversations and nourishing each other and having circle time and singing and dancing and communal living. It's just, yeah, we need to call more of that in. Where the magic
Love,
is.
love communal living. All right, let's
Yes.
talk about the closing chapter of pregnancy and then leading
Ah,
to the birth altar. And I know that's
yes.
where you're journeying to. You've been through this
Yes.
before with your daughter. And in there, let's talk about the system of due dates. Because a
Yes.
question I find very abruptive
That's
for
where we were
pregnancy.
coming back to. That's right. I was had in my mind that we're coming back to something, and that's it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I typed a note because I've
Oh,
got
you're
pregnancy
amazing.
brain. You probably also do have pregnancy
I
brain.
do. I do.
So something I've always felt quite intrusive is due dates, even before pregnancy. Like I found that quite
Mm.
intrusive for a number of years now. Also, the fact that just because your belly is sticking out and looks like it has a baby, and it doesn't mean that you can touch it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because there's a baby there doesn't mean you can touch the baby. And the society that we live in is very like in your face like that. And so
I
a common question I get, and I think every pregnant woman gets, is, or pregnant couple, like, as my
Yeah.
partner gets the same questions. Oh, when are you due?
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so arriving to the birth altar and the altar of transformation into mother again,
Mm.
on motherhood, there is no defined time. It's kind of like the recipe says the cake will bake for 45 minutes. Sometimes it's a 52-minute bake, and sometimes it's burnt after 38 minutes. Like, there's just, you know what I mean? Like, there's no definitive
Yeah.
time. And so how do you move through this, like the pressures of others in preparing for the birth altar that you desire, and in working,
Mm.
in welcoming in your own child?
Mm.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
Is that
again, I feel so different this time. The first time I was very protective and very inward and was in a new area. I didn't have family around. I didn't have so many friends and didn't tell anyone my due date. I was very secretive. Didn't even tell a lot of my friends that I was pregnant until like 19, 20 weeks. Um, but this time I've been telling people the date, which has really surprised myself. But I
Mm.
feel really solid in myself that like it's totally normal to go 2 or 3 weeks over. It's not even a thing now. I just feel like I've got so many friends that have actually free birthed, which is or sovereign birthed without a midwife there at all. The woman's just feeling that real connection, empowerment in herself. And most of them actually do go 41, 42, 43, even 43 and a half weeks over. And it just feels like a totally normal thing now. It's not even a thing. It's the system that's putting pressure on women around that I even though I hired a private midwife for my first, I had fear of going over 40 weeks. It wasn't if the baby was going to be bigger or like any like that something was going to happen over that time. It was just the pressure. I don't want to feel pressure like you have to give birth now. You're overdue. And I've also seen through my work, we started discussing this before we hit record. Um, Women can conceive in all different times of a cycle. It's not just the 14 days. So the due date is calculated that every woman has a 28-day cycle and she ovulated and conceived on day 14. And that is not the
Bullshit.
case. It is absolute bullshit. Why are we still following this method? I guess there's a lot of women that can't remember when their last bleed was, or they don't have such a connection with their
Or they
cycle.
have
So I
so much
guess
sex all the time. They're like, it could have
yeah.
happened on any of these 12
That's
days.
right. So I guess, we have to kind of generalize it, but there needs to be more leniency in the system. It is so unfair that they're forcing women to go get scans every day if they go over 40 weeks or inducing them at 40 weeks. Like the stats around birth and intervention, it is absolutely disgusting in this country and other countries. Because once you're induced, that raises your chances of having other interventions like epidurals, episiotomies, and then C-sections. The chances of that goes up by like crazy, like 50, 60%, something like that. You can look into the stats. And the induction comes from they just want to have more control over when the baby's coming, or particularly in the private hospital, it's even worse. Their cesarean rates are up like 70% because they pretty much 90% of women through the private system get induced because the obstetricians don't want to be delivering babies all night long on a Saturday or Sunday night or the week of Christmas. So it's just there's still so much masculine patriarchal control in the birth system. Um, and so forget how we got onto that tangent. Oh my gosh.
Due dates, and then that's,
Thank you.
the babies come when the babies are ready. And
That's right. And you could have conceived on day 20 of your cycle, day 25. There's also a thing called lunar fertility where you can ovulate a second time each month. And that could have been during your bleed or the day before you bled. So if you conceive the day before your bleed, that's 14 days after the system would have seen that you ovulated on day 14, but you actually ovulated on day 27 or 28. So that would push your birth 2 weeks later than
are
what
you
they
really
expect.
giving birth at the 40th week or the 42nd week or the
That's
38th
it.
week? It's like, who knows?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So they're just that's a huge thing that pressure needs to be taken off. It's a lot more relaxed over in Europe. Parts of Europe, they see 42 weeks as the full term. And yeah, it would be so nice to have that pressure taken off women because even through the home birth system, it's still, yeah, there's still policies and procedures around that. A lot of private midwives are a bit more relaxed, but it's still, you still feel the pressure. So I had a lot of fear around that with my first pregnancy. But this time, since I don't have a care provider in the system, I guess I feel more relaxed around telling my due date. And I guess I do like knowing due dates, I am one of those people that asks, I want to know what star sign you're going to have. Is it on the cusp that you're
Yeah,
due? But
what if it's on the cusp? Yeah.
that's right. You don't actually know though, because then you can go to, like, if I go over, I'm going to end up with a completely different. I think it's only a week over. I'll end up with a different star sign than what
But is it
I'm
over or is it on
predicting.
time?
Yeah, that's right.
Like
Exactly. That's
that's
what we
just
don't know.
the conditioning of the wording that we use. And
Yes,
like I catch
exactly.
myself saying it sometimes too. And I
Yep.
really love Jane's approach. For those who don't know, both of our teachers, Jane Hardwick Collins, beautiful friend of ours,
You should know her if you don't.
look her up. Don't worry, she's coming to join us in this
Our
series.
muse. We love her.
And our sage essence, and
Mm,
she talks about it in the moons. So
mhm,
I'm in my third moon, or am I?
mhm,
We have 10 moons of pregnancy because she's got a great book called 10 Moons.
mm,
And I think it's really fascinating. I've really noticed this in my own pregnancy experience that, I just say, oh, I'm in my fourth month. And they're like, but
mm.
what? Like, where are you? And I just let people know what month I'm in. I don't really say trimester. I just say my month.
Yes.
People get so confused. And I'm like,
Yeah.
also, it's none of your business.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
what does it
Yes.
matter? Like, what are you going to do with the information when I
Yes.
tell you that I'm in my seventh month?
Mm.
Like, what is
Yeah.
that going to change for you? I understand it might be different if you've got a parent who's like, I'm taking long service leave, or I understand that. But
Yes.
like, when you're walking down the street or you stop at the market stall to buy blueberries and someone says, oh, when are you due? It's like, does it really matter to them?
Next year, 2024. You could even go a
Literally.
bit wider than that. But I
Oh,
loved what you said this season. You
yeah.
do in autumn.
Yeah.
That's again giving a yeah, more variety. I guess we do as modern humans, we like to really pinpoint things. We want the
The
pinpoint
label, the idea, the
people.
plan, the
Yes.
structure. Yeah. And I
Yes.
think for me,
Yes.
one of the reasons why I've really, both B and I have enjoyed informing people that we're having an autumn baby is
Mm.
because I know, like, I'm going to be pissed off if you're listening to this and you're in my circle, I'm going to be pissed off if you're calling me in
Yes.
late summer, in summertime, and you're like, have you had the baby yet? Have you had the baby
Yeah.
yet? I'm like,
Yeah.
I will block you. And I
Yeah.
won't know when I will unblock you because I will be in the cave of postpartum. So for me,
Exactly.
I just was happy to avoid that situation and
Yeah.
talk about the due dates. One, because we've hired a private midwife so that we can birth at home. That's the intention, the
Mhm.
vision of our birth. And one of the stipulations that I asked in the interview, because I interviewed her,
Mhm.
was, what are your thoughts on due dates?
Mm.
And what do you think is too far over and too early? And so that was
Mhm.
one of my questions because
Great question.
I wanted to understand from the get-go where she sat with that, so that when we get
Mm.
closer to the altar of birth, if she started asking questions like, hang on a second, you told me that you don't mind if we go to 42,
Mm.
or
Mm.
yeah. And so it's just I think it's
Yes.
also about trust. And
Yes.
we could rant on this forever, but I told you this before, but I really hired the midwife for Brenton, not for me. But
Uh,
I think it's important to know that, like, do whatever you feel supports you. There's no wrong or
yes.
right. It's
No,
you're the
exactly.
person that needs to bring the baby into the world. He can't
Whatever
do it
makes you
for
feel
me.
safest.
She
Yeah.
can't do it for me.
No.
And as Jane says, the best birth supporter is someone who is knitting in the corner, facing
Yes.
away from you, and is
Yes.
ready to be there when you call for them.
Exactly.
And I was like, maybe I need
Exactly.
to buy my midwife knitting needles.
Yes. knitting tutorial DVD and some
I have a lot of
tools.
weaving tools here. I'm weaving grass. Maybe I'll teach her to weave in
I
when
guess I really like Rachel Reed's initiation into childbirth. I think that's what it's called. It's a red book, great book. I listened
I
to the
have it.
audiobook. Great. It's
I've got it to
fantastic.
read. Yeah.
And she goes through and describes the physiology of birth, how every breath the mother takes is getting in the exact amount of oxygen that the baby needs while it's coming through the birth canal. Every position that the mother gets in is exactly the right position that the baby needs to come through. And if a baby's stuck, the woman will intuitively move the right way for the baby to come out. So now when I watch birth videos and I see the midwives like touching the woman or telling to move her leg or telling her to breathe or push in a different way, I get really triggered by that, because if the woman actually has this deep connection with herself and a deep connection, trust in herself and the birth process and the baby, trusting that the baby knows how to do what it needs to do, and if there's a woman in the room that has more of a hierarchical role and feels that responsibility to let the mother know that she should be breathing another way or to move her leg, like that could change the outcome of the birth. And it's also taking the woman's power away in that way. So yes, having a midwife in the room that's there in case there's a medical emergency is great. And if she can just be sitting in the corner knitting or just be come when she's needed or called, that would be the ultimate. But it's yeah, it can be challenging to find a midwife that's willing to do that. They still, they need to keep themselves covered and be doing the checks. And, if they didn't, something happened and they weren't checking, then they're more liable. But yeah, it's still there's this interesting phase in the birth realm. But yeah, we innately know how to bring our babies earthside. It's just finding that deep trust within ourselves and the birth process. It's a completely normal, safe, and beautiful experience that women get to have. Yeah, and there was something else I was going to say about that, but I've just lost my train of thought.
No, I
Oh,
love it.
but
Thank
it's
you for sharing.
exciting. It's exciting. I can't wait to give birth again. I'm so excited. It's just, yeah, it's such an empowering experience. And yeah, I had a really beautiful first birth. And yeah, really beautiful first birth. And it was just like a 12-hour meditation, just moving energy through my body to bring the baby earthside. And yeah, I kind of expected that this birth would be quicker and easier, because that's the general stats. If you have a certain particular birth, then generally it gets quicker and easier the second time. But I've come to realize that's actually not the case. I had a psychic tell me that I'm going to have a really long, difficult labor, and I was grateful that she shared that with me. I don't think that that's going to manifest, but it's nice to know that it's a possibility so I can prepare myself for that. And then I've had another experience where it seemed like the birth was going to be through a meditation, really quick and erratic, like 3-hour labors. People are like, oh, you're so lucky to have a 3-hour labor, but 3-hour labor is actually really intense because the body's
Really
doing
intense.
a lot of work in a quick amount of time.
Yeah.
So to be prepared for anything, it's just every birth, every pregnancy, every birth, and every child is just so different. So I am just, yeah, open to whatever it needs to be. And yeah, just moving into that state of just becoming a clear channel and a clear vessel for however this baby wants to come through. Yeah, and it's exciting. I actually really am looking forward to it. It's such a beautiful initiation. It is, birth is like a ceremony, and it is this like double-edged sword of pain and pleasure, and you can actually find the pleasure through the pain. It's amazing. It's exciting. I can't wait for you to experience it, Jem.
Oh, thanks, honey. I always think, when I talk about the menstrual cycle, you'll get this, is that when people hear things for the first time and they have their own remembering experience, I'm always like thinking of Aladdin and the magic carpet, and it's a whole new world. And
Yes.
I think every step we take in a new initiation of womanhood or the feminine or the transitions we can move through in our menstrual cycles, just like preconception to conception to pregnancy to the different stages of pregnancy to birth to post-birth, that's a whole new world,
Yeah,
when you're
it is.
experiencing it for the first time. And I'm really excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of our listeners today are going to be like, God, this is so inspiring, listening to different an outlook. And I think that if you're listening to this and you resonate with the way that we talk about birth and we discuss the space of this experience, is that if you don't have someone in your life you can discuss that with or move towards in that way, find the resources, reach out for the books,
Facebook groups, books,
groups. Like,
podcasts.
if do what makes you feel great. You're
Yes.
the one that needs to birth the baby. You're the one that's growing the baby. You're the one that has to recover, feed, and nourish the baby. And I think it's
Mm.
really important that women can take back the ownership of those decisions.
Yes. Yes.
Um, just like that decisions with the menstruation and
Yeah.
decisions like what I decide to do with my blood, whether I drink it, paint my face in it, you know, put it in a burning fire, like whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. And I'm just so blessed to have people like you in my life where we just vibe on the same thing. And it's like the
Mm,
alignment is
thank
so beautiful.
you.
So thank you
Yeah,
for being here.
it's really important to find your tribe in whatever way. And there's so many Facebook groups now that you can find other like-minded women, because yeah, not your family and your friends might not always vibe with you. I know with my first pregnancy, even having a home birth was like outlandish and radical. I ended up then manifesting friends that were on the same page on the way that they parented and fed their children and birthed their babies. And yeah, I guess I don't have such a thing with the due date this time, because I feel like I'm pretty much on the same page with all my family and friends now, which is amazing. Like, it's not so outlandish to not have a midwife and not to have that systematic care this time round. And yeah, I just have this deep trust in myself and a real knowing of who I am now that I'm, yeah, turning 35 on the weekend, and not in my 20s. I just feel so different. And yeah, I think that's the place that we aspire to be as women. If we've handed our power away in so many ways for so many lifetimes, and yeah, through our menstruation and all the conditionings of society of how we should look, act, eat, drink, whatever, feel, menstruate, birth, there's so many expectations that are placed on us. But once we allow those to fall away and connect deeper with ourselves, yeah, no one can fuck with us. We do the way things we want, we do the things how we want to do them.
Amen. Mic drop. Let's just drop the microphone.
That's
Such
where, yeah, it's where we need to be. Feminine power and strength, and connected to our own needs and desires, because we know we have that knowing inside of ourselves. It's just a matter of letting the rest fall away. And continually tested always, but yeah, trust our own.
that's the reverence of connection
Mm,
and being able to trust that process, you know.
yes.
It's just like, oh, this is scary, but hey, I've got so much strong reverence with myself that like
Yes.
I trust that, and that you move
Yes.
through with that. And I think we could rant about this forever, but it's a lot of people reflect and project as
Mhm.
opposed to, you know, allow the mother or the to be mother to just have her own experience and to trust that
Mhm.
experience for herself. And yeah, we could rant about this forever, but how can
Mm.
people find you? How can they connect with you? How can they
Well,
learn more about you and all the things you do?
well, I'll be deep in postpartum when this podcast is launched. So you could jump onto my Instagram. I might possibly be sharing, I think I will be sharing my postpartum journey. I'm also really big on postpartum and have been for a long time. It was through my Ayurvedic studies 12 years ago. I started a postnatal doula business, and now there's postnatal doula businesses everywhere, which is amazing, because modern women are expected to pretty much give birth and go out and do the groceries and catch up with their friends for coffee a day or two after birth. That is not okay. You look at ancient cultures and there is this nourishing period of postpartum. The woman is so open and vulnerable, the baby is open and vulnerable, energetically, physically. There needs to be this cocooning period after birth where you can rest and rejuvenate. And one of my teachers share that the first 40 days after birth sets the woman up for the next 40 years. So that's physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. If we're burning the candle at both ends and trying to reach up to society's expectations, it will come back to bite us. So yeah, postpartum is just this sacred time of bonding with the baby and really nourishing and grounding back down. And yeah, everything's open. The pelvis is open. Our energetic bodies are open. We're so sensitive. So yeah, not so many visitors, really simple, easy to digest food, lots of warmth, lots of skin to skin with bubs. And yeah, just this, it's a baby's been inside us for 9 months. Let's not forget that. And then it comes out into the world. It needs to have not so much stimulation and just lots of warmth and closeness. And yeah, so postpartum, I'll be deep in postpartum once this is launched, but yeah, you can reach out on my Instagram. I'm very quite active on my Instagram. That's like my creative outlet and connection.
Make sure you follow. If you don't already, you need to follow.
And on my website, I do have some beautiful meditations, like I have mentioned. I've got shamanic drum journeys, subconscious reprogramming meditations. Actually, I just dropped that in there, that as we're going to sleep at nighttime, we're accessing the theta brain waves. And so I have different meditations, they're affirmations and certain frequency meditations that you can listen to as you're going to sleep each night. And I've got a really beautiful pregnancy one for your highest alignment and the highest connection to the highest vibrational soul through pregnancy. That's really beautiful. I've got a feminine healing one as well, just overriding all those limiting beliefs that we have as a woman, and a woman connected to the collective feminine pain body, the trauma of the collective feminine pain, the collective feminine wounds. We can override those limiting beliefs. So yeah, that's a really beautiful practice to bring in. Easy. Just put a recording on as you're going to sleep at nighttime with your phone on flight mode, not getting those EMFs. So yeah, it's shaktiholistic.healing.com.au.
And I'll put all of those links in the show notes, along with the links to listen to your previous podcast episodes, so that people can get insight about you and the other aspects of your life and your work. But thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. What a beautiful chat. Such an honor to share. And yeah, I've got to the end of my pregnancy and haven't actually, I wanted to be doing this regularly and share things on my own podcast, and I've just been so full. So now that I'm winding back and we've made time to do this, it's obviously all perfect and in divine timing. Feel like I've shared everything I wanted to share and encapsulated it all in one podcast. So thank you.
You are so worth it, and I'm so privileged. And I just want to say, I'm sending you all the love, healing, and guiding energy as you enter the birth altar and you welcome your little beautiful bub earth side. And as you said, postpartum, like honoring that. And so I wish for you a magnificent orgasmic birth and a restful postpartum.
Thank you. Thank you. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you so much for tuning into every episode of the Well Woman podcast. For everything we mentioned in today's episode, you can find this in the show notes over at wellsome.com/podcast. If this episode excited you, please hit follow on Spotify, which means all of my episodes will pop up in your feed weekly, so you never miss a weekly drop. I'd love you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts too. Love this episode? Come and follow me over on Instagram at wellsome_Gemmalee. Say hi and share what you've taken away from this episode with me. Now, is there a bestie, sister, or a friend who you know who might be fed up, frustrated, and confused with their cycles? Are they ready to join you in awakening their cyclical essence too? Well, take a screenshot of this podcast episode, share it on your socials, email it, text it, or any way you need to get it to them. So together we can all live in flow, harmony, and balance with our cycles. Now, until next time, beautiful, get connected, listen to your body, and remember, body confidence all begins with living in tune with your menstrual cycle.